Hello, everyone. Hey, good evening, and welcome to another episode of The Front. My name is Mike Phillips, and I will be your host, as with every week. Please do me a favor. First off, I'm going to remember to tell you this right now. Please share the show out. Hit that share button. Hit the like button. Participate with us. I've got a great guest on tonight. Now, before we get into that, a couple quick reminders for motivational tips to increase your influence and level up your leadership. Make sure you tune in to leadtheteam.tv. Make sure and check that out and subscribe over there. So I am going to get started. It's Wednesday night, so we got a live leadership lesson, and we are going to get started with my friend Cory Mosley right after this.
Thanks for tuning in to Lead the Teams, The Front.
Make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification so that you're the first to know about new episodes, uploads, and when I go live. Yes, and we are live right now. Speaking of live, right now on my left is Mr. Cory Mosley, business strategist extraordinaire. He's got so many things going on. Absolutely awesome individual. Cory, thank you so much for joining me this evening. I truly appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. I've been waiting for the invite.
Oh man, I know. Like we were saying before we get started, the roles are reversed. When last we talked, you were interviewing me on some automotive stuff, and now the roles are reversed. So, you always have a standing invite. Anytime if you're like, hey, listen, second Tuesday of next month, we're gonna make a show, right? The Cory Mosley Show. We'll get you on here, man. So, hey, do me a favor for the people that are tuning in. If there's someone that's been living under a rock and doesn't know who Cory Mosley is, would you just take a few minutes, kind of fill us in? Who is Cory Mosley? What do you do? What's your business background? And fill in the viewers out there.
Oh, that's a deep philosophical. I might have to go deep, to answer that question. But for those that don't know me, I am Cory Mosley. That is the name my mother gave me. I'm mostly known for my work in the automotive industry. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 14, however, a competitive speaker. I have the fortunate pleasure to speak all over the country on topics that matter to business owners, entrepreneurs, and salespeople. I'm committed to the breakthrough and the idea of the breakthrough and helping as many people as possible create the breakthrough. I've been fortunate to start some businesses, run some businesses. Some haven't worked. But many have worked. So now I'm committed to continuing the education process across all fields. Again, I've got a large automotive community as I dedicated well over a decade of my life specifically to that industry. And now I'm fortunate to be working with, in addition to the auto industry, aspiring entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, coaches, trainers, and agencies across the U.S.
That's awesome. And I've seen that. Yeah, I know that's where you and I connected some years ago was automotive. And then I've seen you've got all kinds of things going on. You have a podcast as well, right? You're hosting a podcast right now also?
Yes, I host Fearless Entrepreneurship podcast. We're streaming out to I think we're up to about 18 outlets now. So we interview entrepreneurs, people who are working every day to build their business. They're sharing their stories, their tips, their advice. As we all try to do this, with our futures, with our businesses.
So let me ask you, coming from that background and branching out, and you have a really broad base right now, what if we were to ask somebody that either works with you, has worked alongside you over the years, if there was one thing that right now Cory Mosley is known for, what would that one thing be?
Well, I'll tell you one of the things. I mean, that's always one of those like pat yourself on the back moments. There are a couple things that come to mind. Not like, hey, the list is so long, but when I look back and I look at things, there's two things that come to mind. Number one, I have always had vision, and I always want to look at what the big idea is. I always want to look at where we can go. And you know what? Sometimes that's a plus, sometimes that's a minus. So if you're constantly, and not that I'm a futurist or I'm super special, but to the point where I always want to know where we can go. How can we go? How can we go bigger? How can we go in an area that maybe hasn't been tapped yet? So the gift of that is great. You have that vision. The downside is if people aren't already there with that vision in their mind, sometimes it takes a while to get them there. And then the second thing is I'm really focused on the breakthrough. And that breakthrough comes in different ways. But for people who coach with me on my coaching program, or friends of mine who, pick my brain, anybody that I speak to that is dealing with a challenge, I just always had an innate ability to try to pinpoint an issue and deliver some kind of aha moment to them. And that's just something I've been very good at. It's a gift that I've added skill to over the years.
That's fantastic. So vision and breakthroughs, and I think your comment there right at the very end where you said it's a gift that you've added skill to over the years. What is it? How have you? I hang on people's last statements sometimes. How have you added those skills? I mean, you obviously have to along the way have had some of your own breakthroughs to be able to coach people through others. So I know that's not on any sort of predetermined question that we may have had, but what sort of skills have you developed that have allowed that?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the most important things was communication, and having communication skills, presentation skills, the ability to explain yourself, explain your idea, and move people to your way of thinking. A lot of people wrap this up and call it salesmanship, but it's actually communication skills. And
Wow.
I was fortunate enough to get drawn into the idea of competitive speaking, extemporaneous speaking at an early age. Like literally, I was 14 years old competing in the Catholic Forensics League, the Technology Student Association, and have always had that. I was the MC at my 6th grade graduation. So there was a combination of identifying that early on. We might call it gift of gab to a certain extent, but
Sure.
identifying that early on. And oddly enough, not just because I know my mother's going to watch this. Oddly enough, I kind of grew up in a household in kind of an ecosystem where I was never told there was something I couldn't do. So a lot of times, since we're talking about we're on a leadership, program here. Leadership starts a lot of times in the parenting. So one of the combining my idea that I knew I wanted to communicate, I knew I loved to talk, and combining that with the idea that there were no limits ever put on me, it created a powerful opportunity for me to enhance that, to start to work on those skills. So when you're competing at that age, you're learning technical skills. You're learning. So I'm very astute, and I belong to the National Speakers Association. I hold one of the highest credentials, that is certified speaking professional that you can be awarded in that field. But it was because I took a technical approach. And the other thing, from a consulting and a strategy end, it comes from this idea. I started to ask myself about 10 or 12 years ago, I started to ask myself, what were the moments where I felt the most alive, the most engaged, and the most, what I say, in flow? What were those moments? What was I doing? Was I speaking to someone? Was I on stage with an audience? Was I trying to deduce a complicated problem or break down a sales process? But I started to pay attention and become hyper aware of those moments where I hated what I was doing in the situation and the moments that I loved. And I've been working ever since to do more of the stuff I love, or that puts me in flow or in the zone, and less of the things that obviously I did not enjoy or don't enjoy as much.
That's all. I've got like 3 or 4 questions that are going to stem from that, man. That is a great, that whole deal. So one of the things I hang on, because I go through this with my kids right now, the teachers are always telling us your kids are talking in school. I'm like, it's going to pay off one day, right? When you're talking, hey, at a young age, and that's a little tongue in cheek there, but at a young age, if the parents groom it, right, that's something and that was something else I hung on, is the fact that you're saying, hey, my parents, they helped groom that. They helped bring it out in you.
Sure.
I'm going to go back to one of the comments that you made early on there just a minute ago in the conversation when you were talking about with communication, steering people's thinking. How is it that because a lot of times, and forgive me, I don't remember the specific terminology used, but you said, hey, getting people aligned and thinking that same sort of direction, right? So how do you continue in that communication? If you're wanting people to move one direction, if you're wanting people to move one way, how do you encourage at the same time creative thinking for those same people that you're saying, hey, I want you to go on this vertical over here, but at the same time, it's really important to grow in business, that you have continued creative thinking and multiple ideas. So how do you encourage that when you're coaching people and such?
Well, what I would say to you, one of the things I'm not an advocate of is I'm not really an advocate of the cheap cook, bottle washer, statement that people like to use tongue in cheek in entrepreneurship.
Okay.
I'm the guy that does everything. I'm the chief cook and bottle washer, as people like to say. Success takes teams, right? It takes people. It takes strategies coming together to work. So that whole idea of some people are creative, right? That's why we have a whole left brain, right brain kind of psychology to us, right? Some people are super creative. I'm huge with the vision. I'm huge with crafting the idea, but then I need people who are executors, right? I need people who are focused on the minutia, because I'm not the minutia guy, right? So I need you have to feed that inside an organization. So creative people are creative. People who aren't creative. And I say that in its simplicity to simply mean finding someone. The quicker you find your strengths as an individual and as a leader inside an organization or a leader of people, the quicker you're able to get in tune with the strengths of your team, the faster you'll be able to move, the stronger you will be, and the stronger your organization will be also.
And that's the goal of all of it, is to move fast, be strong, build an organization, be successful, get the results you want, right? So,
Sure.
while you've brought up a few times, like you're in the leadership role when you said, "Hey, look, my parents, they fostered that environment."
Mm-hmm.
You've talked about just now as you're saying, "Hey, look, you want to groom those people so that they're fired up and they've got their passion."
Right.
How do you help steer somebody? Because I know in your Fearless Entrepreneur Society and in many of the things that you do, I have to imagine, you and I have talked a little bit, and especially just as of late, you're steering people to look, how do you find the fire? How do you find the passion? How do you ignite that? And then how do you keep fanning the flame to keep it going? So what 2 or 3 things do you advise to people? Because you said just a minute ago too, hey, I find what lights me up, and I find what I don't like. And I've had other leaders that I have interviewed on this, Cory, that have said, look, people may not know exactly what they like, but they do know what they don't like. So how do you steer somebody in that? I know I ask these really long questions, but how do you steer somebody to find that out? How do you help them find their fire and their passion and ignite that, or what they don't? Do you have some advice for people looking for that?
There's a couple things to consider, right? I mean, again, speaking from an entrepreneurship business owner standpoint,
sure.
I think Elon Musk said it best. He says entrepreneurship is like walking on glass and staring out into the abyss, right? So it's hard, it's tough. I've known many people over the years that have come to me and said, "Hey, I want to go do my own thing. I want to be a consultant. I want to be a coach. I want to be a trainer." And they kind of go out there for a minute, and then a month or 2 later, or 6 months later, or a year later, depending on what their pain tolerance is, right, or threshold is, then they, go back to work for an organization, which is fine. But again, it's this idea. It's hard. It's not easy. I don't purport to be a life coach or purport to be a, find your passion guy. But what I will tell you is that through my conversations that I have with entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs or people who are already in business but are kind of in that abyss a little bit, through those conversations that I'm asking, I'm always looking for I'm always looking to check their mindset. I'm always looking to check their clarity. I'm always looking to check their accountability, and I'm always looking to check their execution. So those are 4 key things that I'm looking at in that process as a coach, and I encourage people to look at too. Where's my clarity points? What's my mindset on this particular issue? Negative, positive. What's my skill set? As another one. So do you have? I love to eat cookies. That doesn't mean I should be a baker. Right now, could I find a recipe? Could I tinker away and find a good recipe that worked? Possibly. That doesn't mean I should open a bakery. So there's kind of this process where a lot of people are taught about passion and follow your passion, but I'm really big on the fact that passion has to come with a monetization strategy if you want to be in control of your financial future.
I think that's a very good statement at the end also, where you said passion. Repeat that for me. Passion has to come with.
Passion always has to come with a monetization strategy, or else it's just a hobby. I
absolutely agree with that. So what, if if you are somebody that is or let me shift gears a little bit on you. When you're saying, okay, hey, passion has to come with that, and we're talking a lot about leadership. Leadership is, in my opinion, certainly entrepreneurs possess that leadership quality. There are people in organizations that possess that leadership quality. From your perspective, and this is a question I've asked many people also, I'm curious what your thoughts are on it. Difference, or is there one, between leadership and management? So when someone, because there's not really a leader title, like you're not a leader, right? But you are a manager. You have a manager title. So what's the difference, or what are the similarities in those two things?
Well, I'm sure you universally the mantra, and I don't know who to accredit to, but it's not original. But universally, the mantra is, right, you lead people, you manage things. That's the traditional thought process through it. And all too often, people take on the title of manager without any training on being a coach, on being a leader, on setting accountability, on helping other people get clarity, helping a team get in alignment with the future of the organization. I always ask leaders, or ultimate decision makers, as I would say, will your people run out in the middle of traffic for you? Is your team, there's three types of engagement inside in your organization: those that are engaged, disengaged, and actively disengaged. So as a leader, it's very important to know where your people fall into the people that work for you every day. What category are they in?
So how do you define that? You said engaged, disengaged, actively disengaged. What I mean, engaged, I think, is probably self-explanatory. Those are the people that will run out into traffic. They're in, right? They're with you. Disengaged, certainly, I think, would be.
Well, disengaged are the people those are the people that will hang out in the weeds, right? They're not getting too much attention from you. They're not on the radar. They're not off the radar. They do their job. They do just enough. They're not a problem for you, but they're not a superstar for you. That's a potential flag that people aren't overcommit, especially in today's marketplace, right? Everything in our marketplace this is literally the year 2018, 2019 is literally the year of customer experience, right? How do we enhance customer experience? Every organization on earth is trying to figure out if it's an app, if it's the hotels want you to digitally check in, use your digital key. I haven't been to a front desk in forever. So everybody's trying to enhance. I'm getting text messages now. I stayed at the Hilton recently, and throughout my stay, I was getting a text message from the general manager through their system, finding out if my stay is okay, is there anything you can do. So this is we're in the era of customer experience. So this idea that someone in my organization is not trying to go the extra mile inherently is really not acceptable. And then actively disengaged, those are the people right now that clock out of work after you're paying them a wage, whatever that wage is. They will clock out of work and then go on social media and tell everybody how glad they are to be out of here. We literally had somebody that we were following on social media, an employee that was calling out and then going on Instagram, posting about job interviews and posting things. Hey, does anybody know anybody hiring? This is, public information. She's got other people inside the group that she works for that are on, she knows she's on social media with them. So those are the people that will be cancerous to other people who come in the organization and taint their thinking for potentially whatever their motive might be.
Gotcha. So actively disengaged is really they're like gainfully unemployed, so to speak. Right?
They're committed to not having the integrity. They're not committed to the future of the organization, the health of the organization, the success of the organization. They're not committed to any of that. Those are the people that, the moment something got bad, they would run and encourage other people not to work there.
Jeez. And it's sad that stuff's going on, but you and I both know it does. So being that's certainly a challenge that's facing people, leaders and managers in business. What would you say, is that one of the biggest problems, or what would you say are the biggest challenges that leaders face today in business right now?
Well, human capital is an issue. Human capital has always been an issue. Developing people has always been an issue. I learned many, many years ago philosophy. Again, I don't know who to accredit to, so it's not original. But the philosophy I subscribed to early on was hire slow, fire fast.
Yep.
And I see so many people do the opposite. I see organizations that hang on to people that should have been gone 6 months ago or a year ago. I worked with one organization where we had an employee that was there probably a year or more too long. So you have hire slow, fire fast, and then the other thing you have is trainable, coachable, replaceable.
Okay, so repeat that last part for me again too. Sorry, I
I'm
was
giving you all
looking
my
at you are, man. That's really good.
trainable, coachable, replaceable.
Okay. So
3 phases.
speaking of trainable, coachable, replaceable, I'm going to shift gears
Mhm.
now to you because we're kind of coming to the tail end of this. You
Okay.
are someone that's certainly trainable and coachable. You're somebody that, for myself, I've followed over a long time. I've learned from you, from the things that you've written, put out there on social media, put out there on the internet. So let me ask you a question. Who is somebody you consider a mentor? Who's somebody that you've had a tremendous gain from in your life that you'd say, you know what, this person's really poured into me, or that you've learned from and such in your business career?
I am an investor of information. I mean, you're looking behind me. Those aren't props; those are real books, and that goes from the top all the way deep. We have another library in our home also. So I'm influenced by so many people, and again, for me, it's not about reading a book cover to cover. It's about having strong references, having strong information that's there. So there's really a lot of people that have influenced my philosophy. I will tell you probably the greatest, the two greatest impactful people on my psychology early on in my life was probably Les Brown and
Okay.
was Jim Rohn. Those were probably the two most impactful when I think about reading content and information. Profits are better than wages. Don't don't it's not about I can't I'm trying to think of it off the top of my head, but it's not about how good you are, it's about how good you want to be, or don't wish
Right.
things were easier, you were better. Those philosophies that came early on. People like Tony Robbins have been influences. A lot of the people that you would imagine, right? In the modern day, people that I'm looking at right now, of course, it's people like Grant Cardone, it's people like Gary Vee. A lot of the mainstream people. I'm about levels. So if you understand, my mentorship belief is about levels, and what I mean by that is if if I have zero, if I have a business that's generating $0 right now,
Hmm.
I'm not sure that I'm not a proponent of going to follow the billionaire, right? I want to follow somebody who I want to put a mentor and follow somebody who is now making 6 figures in the business. If I'm making 6 figures in my business, now I want to go find me a mentor that's created 7-figure businesses. Once I start making 7-figure business, I want to tear up. I think all too often we want to go from my business is doing $48,000 a year, so let me start studying everything Richard Branson did to become a billionaire. And I think there's a lot lost in that translation. The other thing I would add about mentors is I'm truly blessed to be part of the National Speakers Association, which is an association that really welcomes people in who are committed. So the relationships that I've built from that organization, from people who have turned into mentors and mastermind, people like Delatoro McNeil, people like Willie Jolly, who's a Hall of Fame speaker, people like Walter Bond, Ed Robinson. These are people who I've had tremendous access to as a byproduct of my involvement in this wonderful organization, the National Speakers Association. So it's created a lot of opportunities for me. And then, within my space, I have colleagues who
Sure.
we're not calling each other mentors, but I have colleagues who are definitely doing things that I admire some of the work they're doing. And there's people out there that are doing great things, especially going into the automotive space. David Kane and I have been lifelong friends and learned from each other. Sean Bradley and I have been friends for a long time, and we learn from we beat off each other's hustle. So I think it's a combination. I know that's probably a long-winded answer, but it's a combination of people that I know virtually and that I can pick up the phone and call as well.
I think it's a great answer. Long-winded or not, I think it's a great answer. And I think I backing up, I hang on certain things people say. I think
Mm.
I've heard that before, where you're saying you tear up. I think
Yeah.
you put that in a really good perspective. You tear up because I think when somebody is coming in and they're earning a $50 or $100,000 position,
Yeah.
they can't see from where they're at. Some of that other stuff. And then I do
Right.
think yeah, certainly you have an amazing list of mentors, and I know,
And the quick thing
yeah,
is also it creates a false belief. It creates a false sense of what's possible or
right,
where someone thinks they should be. So people love Gary Vee. Like I like Gary Vee like the next guy, right? Gary Vee has 22 people, last I checked, on his personal brand team. 22 people who put out all of the stuff that you see and help him create that omnipresence that he has.
right,
So someone that wants to be an influencer or that kind of thing, they're like, oh man, Gary Vee's out there hustling. I'm gonna be Gary Vee. Gary Vee's got 22 people that make all that happen. So when you go out and you want to do your own Instagram filters, you want to try to do your own podcast, you want to try. Let me tell you, I couldn't do from this set, from this video, from the pie, all the stuff we put out, it takes down to the note. I mean, there are notes on my desk here that someone put on my desk before I got on this interview to do it. So you're fooling yourself. Solopreneurship and this idea is an entity, right? But it's still not without people. It's a you need a network of freelancers, a network of what they call independent. By 2020, it's reported that 47.6 million people will fall into the category of full-time independent worker. So
wow,
you can be a solopreneur in your mind. That doesn't mean you don't need to have an organization. So I think it creates a false sense when you when you're doing 50K and you want to follow a guy doing $1 billion, and you skip over the guy who's got a $500,000 business,
right.
and then you hit that, and then so I think that's the tough part when we're all. I love motivation like the next guy, and I try to educate, motivate, and activate as many people as possible.
Activate, man. And well, here's the thing too. When you're saying, okay, Gary Vee's got 22 people, the thing people do not consider, they look at the dollars and say, well, I want the dollars, right?
Right.
There's the time invested of 22 people.
Mm-hmm.
There's as one individual, two individuals, you don't have that amount of time to pour in either. So
Right.
I'm going to give a shout out. There's a few people. I've got my laptop running on Facebook. Certainly, your wife is watching. So thank you to her for watching. You said your mom's going to be watching later. Yeah, that's one. Hey, Trevor Brooks said hey earlier. A few other people went by. Irvin, Gene Worley said he had the pleasure and benefit of having you mentor him. So real life right there, right? While we're watching. So Dan Webb, what's up, Dan? How are you? And then Roger. Those are the people that I can see on the screen. Comments have been going by and such. So you're a popular guy, man. Hey, let me ask you too, kind of in closing. What I have two quick questions.
Sure.
And first off, what are some resources that you would recommend for someone looking to get into a leadership role? What's some resources you'd say, hey, look, you got to pick up this book or subscribe to this podcast or whatever it may be?
I got to tell you, that's a tough answer only because I'm not in the space of, hey, I'm looking to skill up on leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, I couldn't read off books by name to you only because I will tell you that I have a lot of leadership content from people like Peter Drucker, people like Warren Bennis. I'm going old school for some people.
Absolutely.
Because the fundamentals are important, right? Peter Drucker, Warren Bennis, Jim Rohn is another good one. And then fast forward, I find myself getting into a lot of leadership information from our military personnel. So I can't rattle off their names because they're not as prolific as some of the other people, but I'm reading books by ex-Marines and Navy SEALs and, four-star generals. I have that in my toolkit now to look at leadership. I will say that Steve Jobs said something amongst the many things he said that is a quote I carry around often, and I always slip it in when I talk to anyone who's in a leadership position.
Here it goes.
And it is this quote. It is, you cannot mandate productivity. It is an organization's responsibility to equip its teams with the tools they need to be successful. I never miss an opportunity when I'm talking to leaders to share that quote.
That is a fantastic quote. Here's the last question I'm going to ask you as we're headed out this afternoon. And then certainly if you have something to add to take us out. But what piece of advice, if it was you coming up and you said, hey, I would tell me this, what piece of advice would you give to somebody that is going into either a leadership or, for in your case, an entrepreneurial or solopreneur? I know you've given a lot of advice during this, but if you said, hey, look, you got to know this one thing, man, here's what you need, what would that be?
Well, I think you kind of asked it two ways. One, you talked about if I went back to my younger self. I think I heard you say that, number one.
Sure.
So let me take that part and I'll give you the other part. If I go back to my younger self, I would have said I needed to move faster. I sat on the fence for way too long. I started my life and my career very early on, literally owning businesses at 18 years old, getting into a car business at 19 years old. And I was so far ahead, making six figures before I was 22, or by the time I was 22. And then there was a period of time where I didn't I didn't go for things that I should have gone for. And that will probably be my greatest regret, is I sat on the fence. I didn't, Les Brown talks about this too, but I didn't feel I had achieved enough, or I was qualified enough to educate in a certain area, even though I knew what I was talking about. I didn't feel like my resume was deep enough. And those were the things that kept me from really pivoting to an area like I'm working in now for many, many years. And then the second thing, as far as the advice would be from a business and a life standpoint, right, is what is it that connects your passion to your ability to create the lifestyle that you want? And you get to define that, right? So if it's not big watches and big houses and big cars, again, you get to define what that is. But what is your passion play? What part does your passion play? And then how do you connect it to a strategy? And that does not mean, I want to make sure I get this point out before we get off here, is everybody is not supposed to be a business owner or an entrepreneur. It's not in everybody's DNA, and sometimes that skill can't be learned or trained. I was on an elevator when I used to live in a high-rise building on the Hudson River in Jersey, and I got an elevator with my neighbor who worked for Bloomberg, and he was asking me what I do and talking about it, and he said, "Man, I would never want to do that." He says, "I want to work for a big company and move up in management." And that is my ideal situation, work for a big corporation. So there's also this unnecessary pressure on everybody that they think their only path to success or financial security or financial wealth is working for yourself. And let me tell you, there are plenty of people, thousands and probably tens of thousands of people working for themselves that got $2.
Isn't that the truth, man? I think that's a really great way to take us out. You have any other words of wisdom you want to share before we close out, man? You're just on fire. I'm gonna let you keep going. If you got all night, we'll be here. So,
listen, you talked about an alignment, right? I'm in absolute alignment with being here with you right now and sharing this information. And it's you that's got the time constraint, not me, because this is valuable. I mean, this is information that I love sharing. This is what I do. Obviously, we have a monetization strategy to go along with it, but this is in complete alignment with who I am, what I do, what's on my spirit to be doing, and whatever religion you're into, this is in complete alignment with me and what I like to accomplish. So I love participating in things like this.
It's fantastic, man. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time. I know that our viewers appreciate your time tonight. Cory, thank you for taking the time out to join me. I appreciate you, man. And
you're very welcome. And anybody needs any info, no, that's good.
I'm sorry, you're on it, man. Pitch it. How do they get a hold of you?
CoryMosley.com is our page where all the info is, and from there you can go. If you're a viewer, Mike, I know you're well entrenched in auto as well. If you're in auto, you can pivot right on over to Mosley Automotive. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to get started, you can pivot right over to fearlesswithcory.com, get free training. So that's my main hub, CoryMosley.com. And listen, I'm glad to be with you, Michael, and your audience, and anything I can do to help people, that's what I'm committed to do.
Fantastic. And I will tell you, for me, the best way, I'll tell anybody out there, if they just Google Cory Mosley, it comes up, man. Yeah, there's a vertical.
When you say, like, hey, just, you want to find me, Google me, right? That sounds super arrogant when you say that, but
Hey.
There's no shortage of information on me via Google, for sure.
Absolutely. And there's something in every vertical for someone that you're able to help out on. So thank you again, Cory. I appreciate you joining me this evening.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. And for our viewers tonight, thank you. That brings us to a wrap for another live leadership lesson from the front. Just a quick reminder, I do this every Wednesday night at 7:05 p.m. Eastern Time. And I do share another episode on Sundays. On Sundays, it's more of a training, a 3-step, a 5-step, and such, as far as that being part of the Front podcast. So I'd love for you to join me on Wednesdays and Sundays. I think that's everything. So thank you so much for taking the time to tune in and join us. Check out leadtheteam.tv. Hit that subscribe button. Share this video out. Cory brought such an amazing wealth of knowledge and wisdom and insights to this show. You're doing your friends a disservice if you don't share this video right now. I'm telling you, click the share button. It's awesome. So thank you so much for tuning in and joining me this evening on the front. And until we speak next, I hope you have an absolutely fantastic day. We'll talk to you soon, everybody.